For more on the Iranian angle, let's head to Nader Hashemi. He is the director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Denver, and he joins us now from Toronto. So let's first off begin with your reaction. What went through your head when you saw that video and when you heard about this attack?
Well, it was quite shocking and horrific, both because of the violence and the injuries that Salman Rushdie has sustained, but also because this really came out of nowhere. I think the last thing on anyone's mind, probably including Salman Rushdie's mind, was the threat to violence against him. It was a general view that the death threat that the Iranian government had issued against him over 30 years ago was very much a thing of the past, not of our current moment.
When was the last time the Iranian government made a public statement about Rushdie?
Well, it happens quite frequently. The hardline ruling establishment in Iran frequently says quite openly and quite proudly that the bounty on his head remains, that Salman Rushdie deserves to die. But when this issue first surfaced over 30 years ago, it became an international crisis for the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they gave these pledges to the European Union that they would not actively seek to assassinate Salman Rushdie for reasons of their own national interest, because they were suffering economically and politically, but internally for reasons of domestic propaganda. Hardliners in the regime still claim to invoke the death sentence for reasons of Islamic authenticity, of course, a very warped interpretation of Islam. So these things still take place, but the general view among analysts of Iran is that Iran is not actively seeking Salman Rushdie. That's a thing of the past. I think the Islamic Republic of Iran is still guilty here for incitement by virtue of its ongoing public statements by elements within the regime who still call for his death.
Nader, I wonder if you could kind of give us the history of the fatwa against Rushdie for those who may not be familiar with how it all started.
Well, the book, the Satanic Verses, was published in 1988, and this generated sort of small scattered protests among various Muslim communities, primarily in England, where the book first appeared, but also in India. And then Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, issued this infamous fatwa saying that Salman Rushdie had committed an act of blasphemy, and that it was incumbent on Muslims to carry out a death sentence against him. And then this sparked a global international crisis, particularly for Iran. There were a series of translators and other people involved in the promotion of the book who also faced death threats. Some of them lost their lives. And so it was a big issue in the 1990s. It's gradually withered away when Iran sort of, gave these assurances to the European Union that, it wouldn't actively seek to kill Rushdie. But Rushdie, had to go into hiding for many years. But gradually, I think after the first decade after the fatwa, his security started to relax and he started to appear in public much more frequently. I saw him speak in Denver in 2015. There was very little security there. Right. And the general view was that this was over.
And this was not the first attempt on his life, correct?
Correct. There has been, right from the time of the fatwa, people had been apprehended in England and other parts of the world with solid evidence that they were trying to assassinate him. So he was, his life was very much under threat. But that, we're talking about an event that happened over 30 years ago. And so that's what's so shocking about this event. It seems like it, was totally unexpected. And the evidence seems to suggest a young radicalized person online with sympathies to the policies of Shia extremism and the Islamic Republic of Iran, carried this act out with no direct link to the, policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But still, I would argue that, because of the ongoing internal promotion of the death sentence against Salman Rushdie within elements of the Iranian regime, they do bear some responsibility here for incitement to violence.
Appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Nader Hashemi joining us from Toronto.